Hello everyone, and welcome to the Marketplacer webinar, How to Increase Marketplace Revenue and Value for Salesforce Commerce Cloud Customers. I'm Beck Badcock, the VP of Product here at Marketplacer and your host for the next 45 minutes. We have approximately 30 minutes of discussion today and 15 minutes for a Q&A at the end, but you can drop your questions into the chat at any time throughout the session, and what we'll do is we'll pick some questions and we'll talk through them at the end. We'd also love it if at the end of the session you could stay on and complete the survey and let us know your thoughts. We're always looking for ways that we can improve these webinars. And finally, the recording of today's session will be sent automatically later today via email, so look out for that. I want to start today by introducing our fabulous panelists who have joined us today. We have Andy Peebler from Salesforce. He's the Vice President of B2B Commerce at Salesforce and guides the strategy for B2B commerce, including product and surrounding ecosystem, go-to-market alignment, and thought leadership with customers and industry stakeholders. We're also joined by Angus McDonald, who's from Barbecues Galore, and along with leading the digital transformation at Barbecues Galore, Angus is an influential thought leader who regularly sought to deliver strategic advice to the boards of many of Australia's leading retail associations. And then finally, last but not least, we have Clive Dickens from Optus. So he joined Optus as the VP, Television, Content and Product Development back in May 2019. And Clive is responsible for product development, lifting Optus's digital capability, and importantly, leveraging Optus's important product assets, content, OTT partnerships, including Optus Sport, SubHub, and Optus Smart Spaces. So we've got some wonderful experts joining us today on the panel. And I thought what we would do is we'd hand over to Andy from Salesforce. As an industry expert, let's set the scene by sharing your perspective on the evolution of the marketplace industry.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Angus and Clive, for joining us today. And thank you, all of you, for listening. We're really excited to be able to share some of these perspectives. The marketplace, category of opportunity for e-commerce retailers has been around for quite some time. If you think about it, since almost the beginning of commercial e-commerce and retailers as a category have sought to extend their range by selling more goods. It actually goes back to predates e-commerce. If you think about really early models of consignment and department store inventory, et cetera, these are not unfamiliar motions. And then for, I'd say, 5-10 years, it was continued to be largely the purview of the largest retailers on the planet, being able to have the infrastructure and capabilities to connect with various providers of other products and not only take the sales, but then make sure the customer service and the delivery, the fulfillment, everything is aligned. And so for a long time, this was the purview of only the largest brands and companies in the world with huge engineering staffs and the ability to maintain all these different systems. What's really been exciting over the past several years is the emergence of technologies that make it a lot easier to start up marketplaces. So integrated platforms with pre-built processes for onboarding sellers, pre-built connectivity to the leading e-commerce platforms like our Salesforce Commerce Cloud, for example. And I think we're finally getting to the ability for companies with less than perfection and gigantic R&D budgets to be able to experiment, launch marketplaces, and grow businesses. And I think it's no better time than the present, because marketplaces as an opportunity have evolved well beyond traditional retail range extension into lots of new areas where certain companies, and Optus in communication space is a good example, where it's really hard to serve your customers well if you can't provide goods and services from other parties. So it's not just about range extension and revenue, it's about relevance to the customer, driving enduring customer loyalty, as well as growth with your customer base. And some business models simply couldn't persist without it. So we're really grateful to have great partners like Marketplacer, and of course customers like Optus and Barbecues Galore looking to lean in.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And I think range extension is definitely a big part of what marketplace means to a lot of retailers. And what we do see is the ones that do the best are the ones that find that relevance for their customers. So and it's quite interesting because we have Optus, who is a really, really big telco in Australia, and we have Barbecues Galore, who is a leading barbecues retailer with an online presence. And you both have very different engineering departments or sized engineering departments, and I find it quite fascinating what they've been able to do with Salesforce, with Marketplacer as well. So what I'd love to do is Clive, I have a question for you, and I'd love to learn more about, or help. I'd love for you to share more about Optus with the audience. So give us an idea about the size and scope of Optus as a business, and how much it has expanded in recent years.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Great to be here. So Optus is a very large Australian business. We employ just about 12,000 people. We have 10 million customers. Our Australian turnover is $8 billion. And we're part of a even larger Southeast Asian corporate called Singtel. And Singtel actually connects 10% of the world's population to the mobile internet. So a vast business. But our traditional business was about providing connectivity on the go or in the home. But our transformation strategy is going well beyond just providing connectivity. We want to solve customer problems in the home, on the go, that also may be powered by connectivity, but aren't limited to providing that SIM for your mobile or that NBN for your home. And that's really why we're on this transformation journey, just so we can actually have a much deeper, lasting customer relationship with our customers and actually solve a range of problems. We can talk about that over the coming minutes, but for an example, you would have thought about having home internet from your ISP, but now from Optus, you can have your smart lock installed. You can have your smart TV installed. You can have all of your security cameras installed. And we not only install them and obviously power the internet for them, but you can buy them from our marketplace. And also you can get your Netflix and your Prime from us as well, and your Disney Plus and in the future, and products like Optus Sport. So we also allow you to go and bring your subscriptions into your home experience as well. So really about transforming from being a traditional large telco just providing mobile and home internet to actually being a transformed corporate that generates lasting customer relationships from solving a whole range of problems in the home, in the small business, in the enterprise, and on the go.
That's huge. That's massive. It must have been very interesting to be part of that over the recent years. And I mean, one of those initiatives as a part of your digital transformation has been a marketplace strategy, right? So what were some of the key deciding factors in implementing that?
Yeah, so we've sort of three aspects to our e-commerce business. There's the more traditional retail and digital line part of our business, which is the largest, which is at this stage definitely not a marketplace, but does utilize all of the great smarts from the Salesforce stack. And that actually is a relatively small skewed business. Now we're selling smartphones, we're selling some accessories and what's called CPEs, sort of home modems. And that's the more traditional side that we do billions of dollars out of that market, but it's not providing any of those additional benefits of a marketplace. So the second element we introduced a couple of years ago is a product called SubHub, which is absolutely a marketplace around reselling those subscriptions. So we had an Optus Sport subscription for many years, and when I joined the company 4 years ago, we said, oh, let's actually resell some of the subscriptions that people want in their home. And that's actually progressed into cloud subscriptions now, education subscriptions, well-being, as well as those very dominant SVODs. So you come to a product called SubHub, and then you add the services you want. And of course, they're provided by Netflix, they're provided by Amazon, they're provided by Paramount, but we're facilitating that marketplace transaction. And the third, yet to be launched part of it, which is really where we're working with Marketplacer and Salesforce together, is around that smart home. And the thing about the smart home is the SKUs needed to make your home smart. If you think about garage opener, locks, cameras, temperature sensors, as well as smart TVs and smart speakers, the SKUs blow out enormously. So it's just not possible for us to keep a traditional warehouse and supply chain model when you have thousands of different SKUs solving unique problems in people's homes. So therefore, if we wanted to solve those problems, we had to move away and move our reliance away from that more traditional supply chain warehouse stock on hand and walk out working across our 400 stores. With SubHub, it was all software, so that was relatively straightforward to do. And then as we introduce our smart spaces no team strategy, we're working then with the actual manufacturers of the devices and putting in a much more disruptive marketplace where people can choose which camera goes with which lock for their home. And the other thing, the reason why that's still transformative, although most of us might have a cloud camera or a electric lock or even a garage opener on our home, there's a new standard called Matter, which is where Apple and Google and Amazon and others are all going to form part of a one standard. It's launched about a year ago, which it basically means that you'll be able to buy a Ring camera and connect it to a Nest Hub. You'll be able to buy a Nest Cam and connect it to a Netgear lock. And you'll be able to add a Yale lock and add it to an Alexa app. So effectively making the smart home a bit like connectivity, where it just works, or even like energy, where it just works. But for the last 5 years, it's been a closed ecosystem, right? You make your decision to be either an Apple customer, a Google customer, an Alexa customer, and that's been wonderful for those corporates, but not great for the consumer. So all of a sudden, when Matter becomes prevalent across devices, and you're just choosing the right device for the right problem in the right moment, then actually, once again, the opportunities will blow out, and we can't rely on that traditional stock on hand model. Hence why we're super excited about launching another marketplace for these devices in the coming months.
Is that Matter, Matter?
Yeah, so you can Google the Matter Alliance. In fact, all of the manufacturers have signed up now. And one of the reasons it was created, because even the market leader is only taking about 10% of the market, whereas Apple and obviously Google dominate the smartphone market. They don't dominate the smart home market anywhere near as much as they do the smartphone market. And actually the smart home market is going to be much, much bigger. We're going to spend way more money on our homes, particularly start including electric vehicle charging points, and solar and smart energy. We'll spend way more money on our homes than we even will our wonderful smartphones. So the market is growing much faster, and therefore it's a really exciting marketplace.
Well, and Clive, it sounds like given all of the change in that marketplace, all the more reason for you not to be sitting on a bunch of inventory for devices that might not be up to the latest and greatest standards, right? So it's a really good place for marketplace.
Absolutely, and we'll just have obsolescence risk all over the place if we try and guess which of these devices is going to solve the customer problems the best. And that's not. Of course, we do that with our more mature smartphone business. There is a relatively small amount of places today that you can buy a Samsung or a Google Pixel or an iPhone, but actually anyone can be a retailer of smart home devices, and lots of people will be. And actually, it's quite hard at this exciting point to predict who the actual winner is going to be.
Yeah, because the seller owns the inventory, right? But they're just selling it through the marketplace and accessing your customers, which is the benefit of the relationship that you have between each other. Thanks for that, Clive. That's incredibly interesting. I'm going to be spending a bit more time looking into Matter after this. But I do want to hand over to Angus now. So Angus, as a specialty retailer in the space, I'm interested to understand why the initiative of the marketplace strategy was appealing to you at Barbecues Galore, and what do you believe you'll achieve from this?
Well, thanks, Beck, and it's great to be here today to be able to share a little bit more about our journey with Marketplacer. I should start by just providing a little bit of background about Barbecues Galore for those who don't know us already. We are Australia's largest retailer of backyard and barbecue lifestyle products with 90 stores across Australia. It is a business that is unique in the world. There are often you find in our category, there will be specialist retailers that may have 2 or 3 or 4 stores, but there are really no other examples that have a national store network like us And we are a business that largely competes with mass merchant retailers like hardware stores, department stores, and so forth. And so it's really important for us to actually be able to take a position of authority around the category as a leader in our segment, and really make sure that we have a clear positioning around being the destination for the category as that national category specialist. And so we're competing with hardware stores, for example, that carry a broad assortment of products. But the one thing that you can get from our stores is that integration of experience, expertise, knowledge, and obviously a market-leading assortment of products. What's really important is that we are in what I would describe as a high involvement, high engagement category, where people who shop in our category typically are looking for a fairly involved process. Nobody just wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to buy a barbecue today. They probably do a fair bit of research online, and certainly our data would reflect that. And so we are very focused on the way that we can bring together a true omni-channel experience, both that rich digital engagement, helping to drive connection around our core offer, people checking pricing, reading reviews, checking availability, and then maybe connecting with the offer in store. But the other thing, as embracing an omni-channel strategy is really important, is using those digital touch points to allow your offer to go well beyond the four walls of what you're able to do within a physical store. And so that's a journey that we've been on for a couple of years now. And Marketplace has played a significant part in allowing us to really extend the breadth and have a much more comprehensive offer available for our customers. And so that's really the role that part of our range plays in our business, is really helping us to support our core range of product that we distribute through our online and physical store network, but then going well beyond that with a broader range of supporting complementary products that help provide a more complete solution for our customers.
You know, I'm really impressed with the strategy that Barbecues Galore has taken, Angus. I remember when I first jumped online and had a look. Obviously, you start with barbecue, right? That's the main reason why you head there, and then you start thinking about how that can change your life and what that will look like. And you have your mates around, you know, and you'll need outdoor furniture and you might need some cushions, and, you know, someone's always going to get out a guitar, right? And, you know, that's something that I found on the Barbecues Galore website. And it's all of those things that really dominate the at home, in the backyard entertainment space, I guess, because it's just more than barbecues itself. So, and you've touched on a really interesting point, which is also shelf space. One of the main reasons retailers will come to Marketplace is because they have bricks and mortar stores and they just don't have any more space. Whereas with the online Marketplace strategy, they can actually start selling more of these products without having to move into a bigger space or invest in that way. So it reduces the risk and the overheads.
Well, it's really important, sorry, just to call out that it's about taking a customer-centric approach, which is ultimately about providing the most comprehensive assortment for our customers we possibly can. And yes, we're using digital touch points to help build that out, but it is absolutely with the customer in mind. And I think the one thing that, just sort of touching on a point that you made there, Beck, that has really surprised us, and maybe we've tested the boundaries a little bit of this ourselves as well, is really what it is that we can sell credibly with our brand. And there's been a few occasions where we've tested different products and different areas on our Marketplace offering, and we've been surprised by what people will be prepared to buy from us. And so there's been a few occasions where I've thought, gee, I don't know whether have we got that right? We've brought in some sort of more obscure categories, but at the end of the day, you know, we're just looking to provide that complete solution for our customers. And I think it's really taught us a lot about how far we can take our brand.
Risk-taking, right? Experimenting with lower risk. What's out of interest? What were some of those categories that surprised you that your customers purchased from you?
Well, when you mentioned, you know, music there as a moment ago, and that's probably really an interesting example of, you know, people think, well, why would that be on Barbecues Galore's website? But typically you've got people that are entertaining, they're getting family and friends around. They're not just looking at the barbecue or where they're going to sit down and eat. They want lighting. They want, you know, music. You know, then there's other things in other areas of the backyard around keeping the backyard and patio area tidy. Even through to, you know, pet accessories as well. So, you know, the dog's running around in the backyard, you need something to keep it occupied as well. So there's been quite a few things there that really surprised us. But at the core of what we're trying to do is ultimately build that destination for everything in the backyard.
Makes sense. And also a very exciting journey for you, I'm sure, too. So I want to do a deeper dive into the whole implementation side, what it takes to set up a marketplace. And clearly, the value proposition is strong. Both Barbecues and Optus have had great success with their range extension strategies. But I think one of the things that we find scares businesses is it costs too much and it takes too long. Everyone would do it overnight and they would do it for free if they could, but these things do take time. To give the audience an idea of the time and investment involved, how quickly did you establish your online marketplace and what were the steps taken to make it a success?
Well, what I can say for Barbecues Galore is it was actually a fairly quick process. I think we went through a journey of looking at the different, once we decided that this was the pathway that we wanted to take, we looked at the different providers that were out there. We felt Marketplacer was the best fit for us. And obviously, we're also partnered very closely with Salesforce as well. And so there was a really strong alignment there. From the moment that we'd made that decision, I think within about 4 months, we were up and starting to get our first products live. So it was a very quick process for us. We had the mindset of really getting a couple of key foundational partners up and running first, in terms of a couple of key sellers to get things up and running as quick as possible. And then in the time since then we've focused on just building out the number of sellers and the number of products on our platform. But in terms of getting those first products live, it was actually quite quick.
Fabulous. How about you, Clive?
Well, so our first marketplace via Suburb, which we're not working with Marketplace, we're working with another international provider. That was about a 9 to 12 month implementation, but it wasn't because of the marketplace side. It was because of the working with the software providers of your Amazons and your Netflixes and your Paramounts and BritBox, because they never allowed anyone to resell their subscriptions via a marketplace before. So it's actually, again, convincing them that this was beneficial for them. But to your point, the implementation on the technology side wasn't the tough part. It was a negotiation with those particular vendors. And then with the second marketplace that we are soon to launch, it's I'd say that's looking like a sort of a 9 to 11 month process, a little bit longer than Angus's successful implementation. But I think the key thing I'd say there is it's, we are trying to range quite a large amount of SKUs from, as I mentioned, with smart homes. So it has that complexity. And one of the things that I'd clearly recommend to people participating in this webinar today or watching it on demand is try and keep the implementation from both sides, from the Salesforce side and the marketplace side, as close to the out-of-the-box experience as possible. Here at a big corporate, we are so tempted to customize. And of course, as soon as you choose to customize, which of course can have lots of wonderful benefits around user experience, but of course that does slow down your implementation. So if you're willing to go fast and break things and use an out-of-box solution, you can go absolutely as fast as Angus and his team done. If you're working inside a brand with sort of quite different brand guidelines that Optus has, we're just a little bit slower corporate, regrettably, in that instance. So I envy that implementation time that Angus is talking about.
Well, Clive, probably one point I would say, just to maybe support your observation there, I would say that the greatest barrier to a speedy implementation is not the technology. It's actually more to do with your internal conversations. And I know other retailers that I speak to that have been on a similar journey, often they've had to spend a lot more time and effort managing through internal issues around, different departments. Whether you're as a retailer, you might have, how you deal with conflict between marketplace ranges that may or may not overlap with your internal ranges. I think if you're really clear about making sure you've got good rules of engagement around some of those pieces, you're clear about the way that you're engaging with your sellers and the way that all fits in, and you're able to present that as one cohesive assortment. That's often where the work is. And I think people overestimate the amount of time spent on the technology side and underestimate the amount of time spent on the more strategic side around the way that it fits in with your existing offer.
100%. I'd like just to add on to that for what it's worth, Angus. We see, and I saw the chat question coming in as well, bigger mistakes companies might make. Number one mistake that I see people make, and this is not even a question in my mind, try to pick the platform before you have us sorted out what your customer needs and what the business goals are. We see that a lot. In fact, far and away, the number one mistake I see companies make is they assume that, and oftentimes it's a business leader who sees the benefit, gets it. It's, you know, there are obviously tremendous benefits, as we talked about. And they mistakenly assume that it's mostly a technology project. And boy, nothing could be further from the truth. It's so much of a business project. You got to know what your customer wants. You got to understand who can give it to you. You got to be able to enforce SLAs from a performance management perspective. It's like so much about your customer. And almost all the things I just mentioned should be nailed down kind of in advance of laying in the plumbing. You know what I mean? Like that, the sequencing is in that order. And we see companies try to mix that order all the time, and it's, you know, not as successful. And one other thing, Clive, I would add is that almost anybody in your industry would say 8 months is a pretty fast turn on a comms project, given the number of stakeholders that you tend to have in your kind of an organization. So good on you for that.
Oh, very true. It is interesting. So Angus touched upon the approach with brand extension and offering non-compete or complementary range to your own core product offering. Do you want to talk us through a little bit more about that? Like, what's the approach that the barbecues takes? What's your position on that?
Well, I think it goes back to the point which I referenced a little bit earlier on around the way you bring together that more complete assortment. And, you know, it's a very easy trap to fall into about not being clear about what your strategy actually is in that area. We made a very deliberate decision that we would see this as this is all about extension of our offer. And so it's all about adding in complementary and supporting categories. So we've been pretty clear about that. And that's obviously so that we, you know, obviously are providing a greater solution to our customers. We're not creating confusion or conflict between different parts of our existing range. And, you know, when it comes to our core categories of barbecues and outdoor furniture, for example, you know, we've got a great range of product there. We've got a comprehensive range of products. And, you know, that's obviously the focus of our efforts in that area. But as you get into some of those other supporting categories, that's obviously where, you know, working with marketplace partners to help provide a more complete solution to our customers makes sense. It sounds fairly simple, but actually being really clear internally around where you draw those boundaries is a significant area of focus. And I've got to say, as the CEO of the company and someone who's been pretty passionate about this particular topic, obviously I've been very motivated to make sure that we've gone after this. What I can tell you is that probably without that level of sponsorship and intervention, there are a lot of opportunities for people to get caught up on some of those details and for that to really slow things down. Having clear rules of engagement about when something can be a marketplace product and when it has to be part of your core range is a very important thing to have worked through and be crystal clear about right at the outset, because otherwise you'll have a lot of distraction and a lot of disruption along the way as you try and navigate through some of those issues. And even for us, having had a fairly clear view of that, obviously, as you start to build out different categories, you inevitably find yourself bumping into situations where, you know, we're maybe ranging something in stores and maybe that overlaps a little bit with something we're doing on marketplace and vice versa. And we've got to quite sensibly navigate through those issues with the different areas of the business. But to completely reinforce Andy's point earlier, if you're thinking about this as a technology product, you know, you're really missing probably an important part of the thinking that needs to be done around one of these implementations.
Absolutely. We're at Q&A time now, so I just want to remind the audience that if you have a question, drop them in the chat, just like Ron Perkins did. Thank you so much for sharing that question. I'll wait. I'm going to ask a few more questions, and we'll see what comes through as well. But let's talk about the tips for companies who are starting their range extension journey or their marketplace strategy. So, Clive, what lessons have you learnt to date, and how have you overcome any challenges?
Yeah, so I think the panel have sort of summarized some great ones already, but I think you really have to define what you're looking to achieve from this and what customer problem you're solving, that it's incremental to the customer problem your e-commerce strategy is already solving, and to really clearly define those guardrails around what it is and what it isn't. My own experience is I'll mention it again just for double clicking purposes. Try and stick to as much of out of the box implementation as you can for your sort of V.0. You can always pretty up the experience. You can always add functionality and customize as you go, but there's nothing like just starting and really actually experimentation. The other thing is that you need to find some advocacy in the business where people provide you that like a swim lane of opportunity. I'm very fortunate here in Optus that our CEO is incredibly supportive of our transformation journey and understands that our smart home approach is new, and we would akin our entry into smart home not dissimilar to Angus's entry into music, and I noticed, Angus, you're also selling meat on your marketplace as well from the fabulous Vic's Meat. So, and although smart home might feel closer to a telco than some of those examples, actually it doesn't. When you think about what you get from Optus, you think about your SIM, you think about your NBN, you actually don't think about getting your Netflix or getting your lock or getting your smart speaker. So actually what you need is a management team and a leader that says, actually, let's do this. You need support, at board level, at exco level, and at leader level, to actually get some things wrong and learn from things, and that's really my role here at Optus. I look after all of our new business lines. Optus Sport is now 7 years old and extremely successful, but at 7 years ago, the idea of Optus buying the exclusive rights to the English Premier League was quite an audacious idea from my predecessor, and we've scaled it now. So you do need a culture where people can say, hey, yeah, we're going to sell meat on a barbecue website. We're going to sell guitars on a barbecue website. We're going to try and make people's homes smart. So really goes deep into culture and leadership and the support for those teams of people to try some new things, and as it becomes part of the core. So there's just a snapshot of things that I'd recommend people really think about before going on their marketplace journey.
Oh, fabulous advice. Very, very good advice. Do you have any more advice, Angus?
Well, look, I think I'd just go back to what we discussed a little bit earlier on, is about getting really clear about the way the strategy translates across different parts of your organisation. Inevitably that will be something that could become a barrier, and that is both thinking about from a merchandising perspective, the way that your buying team or your product team interacts with the marketplace area of the business. Also, the way that your customer care team deals with marketplace inquiries, because obviously the way that you work through and establish service level agreements with each of your selling partners, and the way that you handle the customer service piece, I think being really clear about the way that works and the handoff between when your team and when your selling partners intervene and solve different areas when anything goes wrong. That's obviously a really important area to make sure you've got clear rules of engagement up front around the way that you're doing that. Obviously, these brands are selling under your brand, and if something goes wrong, it could do your brand damage more so than any other, and so you need to be very protective of that. But at the same time, also, you find a lot of the sellers that operate in this space, they are quite good at this. They are experts at their area of online fulfillment and so forth, and so there's a real opportunity to be quite collaborative in the way that you work those things through. So it's not about being all one way or the other, but certainly being really clear and codifying where the responsibility starts and finishes, and making sure that you're being protective of your brand is really important. And then the final piece is then around the way that you resource the marketplace itself, in terms of how you're managing the assortment and the way that you're going out and engaging and recruiting sellers. Probably the best thing that we've done that's made the biggest difference is we've had somebody just focus on going out and targeting particular categories and opportunities we think make sense and where our brand has license to play, and then going out and recruiting those sellers in that space. And that's been a huge part of our success.
And that's huge, isn't it? Sellers, so it's quite interesting because the point that you touched upon with the sellers and, you know, being worried about your reputation, I've seen that quite a lot. It is the biggest concern, because when you're a really large retailer with a great brand presence, and that's your reputation is everything in the market, you do want to make sure that you protect that. The interesting thing that I found is moving more into the marketplace space and talking to a lot of the sellers. Many of them sell on multiple marketplaces and have been doing it for a long time. So whilst retailers are setting up their marketplace or range extension strategy for the first time, these sellers are like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been selling on eBay's, I've been selling on Amazon. I'm on as many places as I can, because me personally as a seller, my ability to attract customers or market is not as good as yours or these other companies, and that's really beneficial for us to join you, and one of the reasons why we do. So and they care about their brand as well, so, and their reputation. So I think, you know, there's a good alignment there with most sellers. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. Okay, we're all good. We have, what time is it? We're about 5 minutes to go. Thinking ahead, what does success look like for your business in 2023 and going into 2024?
Do you want me to go first?
Ellen.
So for us, it's about going on that journey, as I said, from being closely associated solely with connectivity, home and mobile, and actually being more associated with a wider set of customer problems in the business, in the home, and on the go. And one of the things that the trends that I'm spotting more and more across marketplaces is actually where's, you know, I think the first 10 or 20 years of marketplaces, people were thinking about value, right, and range. So, you know, can I range this more cost effectively? Can I sell it to people more easily and maybe demonstrate value? But actually, way that I'm sort of seeing the marketplaces evolve now is actually, you know, not so much just driven around value. So I'm a user of Woolworths' everyday marketplace, and I'm using the Qantas marketplace, for example, at the moment. And actually, one of the reasons I'm using those is because of loyalty and benefits. And so I get my Qantas points and I get my everyday reward points, and I use Amazon because I get my benefits. And I think that's going to be an interesting area where actually to really mature these products, of course you're going to have range, of course you're going to solve customer problems and reduce business complexity, and absolutely need to always demonstrate value. But I think we're going to start to see much more loyalty come into this, and the market share movements around loyalty. And obviously Prime is a great example, market leader, eBay Plus, but actually with things like Qantas and Woolworths doing it, I think it's really fascinating to see how market share in marketplaces is going to be driven actually just as much about ranging and value as it is about loyalty and ultimately points. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how we all decide to reflect that. And then the last thing is I'm also seeing sort of marketplace inside marketplace. I bought something the other day. It was from Amazon, and then it arrived, but it arrived in a catch box. And I was like, hang on a second, I hadn't bought anything from Catch. I'd bought it from Amazon, but there was a Catch marketplace inside Amazon, and it actually arrived in a Catch box. And it was, my family said, well, what have you bought from Catch? And I said, I haven't bought anything from Catch. I bought it from Amazon. But the marketplaces inside marketplaces is sort of fascinating trend as well, where everybody is just utilizing everybody's search inquiries to actually say, you know, to fulfill across multiple journeys. So I think for us, success is about not being defined by why we were created and solving problems around the home, office, and mobile. And some of the trends that I think we're seeing, which I think will probably be our next question, is around this loyalty component and sort of marketplaces within marketplaces, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, well, I think it's an important point you make, which is that, you know, for us at Barbecues Galore, we are both a marketplace platform, but we also sell on marketplaces ourselves. And it comes back to that point about finding where your customer is, being where your customer is. And that's really all that matters. Is if that's where that customer's shopping on a particular occasion, we want to make sure that we're there and we're part of that experience. And so similarly for those marketplace sellers that are looking for ways to connect with customers shopping in our category, obviously being on our platform is a great way to do that. But similarly, we look at other opportunities to make sure that we're being represented in those marketplaces as well. From our perspective, I would just quickly say, as we move into a post-COVID retail environment, really there's a lot of normalization and adjustment to whatever that post-COVID paradigm is in most retail settings. In our category, really we see it as just a doubling down on asserting our position of leadership as a destination and an expert in our category and our space. And so continuing to build our position of leadership around our core offer and continuing to build out that marketplace solution in terms of providing the completeness of what we provide our customers is really what we think the most important things are for the coming year.
Fabulous. That's really interesting, going from being running a marketplace to being a seller on a marketplace. It would build high levels of empathy as well for what the experience is like on either side. I have one question for Andy. What's one prediction for marketplaces over the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, I think it's hard to limit myself to just one, to be honest with you. I think if you look at the reality of the world today, is that marketplaces are literally everywhere. We all encounter them in our day-to-day lives too many times to count. And that's from the largest of the large Amazon type experiences to what Clive is speaking about, where now we have marketplaces within marketplaces because of how, some of the fulfillment chains roll up. And I think the lesson that the world learned over the past 3 years, among many, was that we all have to be a lot more agile with our supply and make sure that we have the most efficient systems to be able to get supply to where customers need it. And that's why, you do have a lot of companies like Barbecues Galore who are both operating and participating in a marketplace because it makes sense for you. It makes sense for your customers. You're doing it, for all of the right reasons. So there's no slowdown in the momentum of marketplace as a topic. In fact, we do see, because so many third-party sellers are out there with robust capabilities and the wherewithal now to be a good seller, which wasn't always the case. It used to be really hard to find people who knew how to do this well and participate. So that's great. There's a known body of work. There are more and more ecosystem attached plays. So something like the Woolworths loyalty or some of the other dimensions that Clive mentioned that are going to start to drive some commonality. Companies like Marketplace are helping tremendously move the ball forward by de-risking some of those initial kind of setups. And so I think not only you're going to find just continued fairly aggressive growth of this, but it's going to get easier and easier as you find more and more companies get sort of geared towards the infrastructure of being a seller with the right kind of tools and product information systems and fulfillment, et cetera. You're going to see more and more companies as a result doing it for smaller reasons, not always big, huge range extensions, sometimes, different kinds of things. Services in marketplaces are just like a brand new nascent category. And I think that there's a really robust opportunity for, and whether it's businesses like Optus, where there's installation, configuration, or whatever, or even party planning services, I think there's going to be growth kind of all over the board. But the name of the game, the people who are going to be truly successful at it are those that are going to be really focused on that service and the fulfillment of expectations. And that's what will keep every company from becoming, as Jeff Bezos once famously said, the customer company. Not everybody's going to be able to make that journey, but if you stay really focused on the customer expectations and like the service delivery aspect, there's almost no limit to how big your marketplace experience can grow if you can continue to meet those expectations. And Amazon's the world's best exhibit of that.
It's such a fascinating world, the world of marketplaces, and I could honestly talk to all three of you all day. I have so many questions I would love to pick your brain on, but unfortunately we're at time today. There was one question for Clive on subscription. We'll follow that up after the webinar. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to Angus, Clive, and Andy. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here today. And a big thank you to our listeners who came along. If anyone listening here today is actively considering a marketplace strategy, please reach out and schedule a demo. There'll be an email sent to you after the webinar, or you can visit the Marketplace website and set one up there. And that's it. So I just wanted to wish everyone a wonderful day or evening or morning, no matter where you are in the world and where you're tuning in from. We will hopefully hear from you all soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely.